Hey, Professor Dyer, thank you for letting me speak. I really appreciate you for that.
Oh, it's fine.
Um,
I'm not a professor, but that's fine.
oh, okay. Anyways, I guess I'll start it off. I'll just ask you a question, and then I guess if you can justify it, maybe you can prove God. If God's real, I guess my question to you would be is why does He allow so many bad things and tragedies to happen?
Right. So, have you ever looked at responses to the problem of evil?
Like evil meaning like
The objection that you're giving is the problem of evil objection. So, I'm just wondering because it's kind of been.
basically because I'm saying that I'm like I'm thinking in the concept or the extraction that there is evil. I'm conceding that there's good and that must come from like the divine, like God. Is that
Well,
it?
I'm just asking if you've ever looked at any of the responses. I mean, there's a lot of different ways people approach the problem of evil objection. But one objection that I tend to use is just simply that if God doesn't exist, then we're going to need a basis for the standard by which we judge good and evil. So there are correct implications for when we deny the real metaphysical existence of the good. One of those implications would be that we no longer have a standard by which to judge either good or evil.
And that standard came from God.
In the Christian worldview, yeah.
Well, then I guess my next question, outside of the Christian world,
No, worldview.
yeah, that worldview.
Yeah.
I mean, I apologize. My first time on the show, so I'm a bit
It's all right.
jittery.
It's okay.
So outside of that view, my question is this: is that then if that's not the case, then there can be no good and evil, and then one act doesn't mean anything. So then how do we define anything? That's then I'm just like a little bit confused. How does anyone make sense from right and wrong then?
No, it's not saying that there is no. It's a hypothetical. You understand what that is, right?
Um, yes.
Right. So
Gotcha.
it's just saying that the comparison is between two paradigms. One paradigm has an account for good and evil as metaphysical things, or in the case of evil, not a thing, but a privation or a move of the will against the good. The other worldview, which would be like the atheist materialist paradigm, typically doesn't have any account for and is really premised on denying metaphysics. So the problem is that when you deny metaphysics as a whole, and that would be things like good, bad, the will, meaning, even ethics ultimately would be part of metaphysics because we're talking about value judgments. Then there's not a basis to make an argument or even a sentence at all. So before I will hear out the argument, but the transcendental argument is an argument prior to predication, prior to making claims at all. So you're going to have to give an account for how you have values at all. Because to say that the Christian worldview is a violation of the paradigm of good and evil, right? Or that it's a violation of some ethical norm that God violates by permitting free creatures to commit evil actions. We need a basis for the standard by which you're saying it's evil, or what is evil. What's good and evil if there's not a God, basically.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of gets gray because, like, one thing I was just thinking of, and then I'll guess I'll mute. Is that basically when, like, for example, and this is kind of like a side thought, but a lot of times I notice or I observe like a lot of atheists. For example, they say, "Oh, I don't believe in God," or this, or whatever the reasoning is. A lot of times I notice they have like a lot of like hard trauma or
Yeah.
something that's like not right in their mind, and then it's like they hate something, and I don't even know if they know what they hate,
Right.
but then they just that internal like war it spews out. Like a lot of times I see it like maybe like kids or like kids or even young adults, like teens, out on their parents because maybe their parent was, they hold those beliefs. And it's like, oh, well, it's like this whole confusing like thing. It's almost like they're at war with God, and then now they're at war with everyone who doesn't think just like them.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times that's the personal psychological motivation for atheism. Of course, they'll say, well, that doesn't really disprove my position. And that's true. There's no psychological report that proves or disproves any position. So positions stand on their own objectively, whether they're true or false, based on the actual argumentation. But yeah, I think you're right about that being a common psychological trait. But what we're getting at here is just basically that in order to make the argument about the problem of evil, to argue at all requires giving an account for something more fundamental. And that's what the transcendental argument is doing, is that it's saying that the things that you're using to argue or make sentences at all can only work in a worldview or a paradigm where God exists, there's metaphysics, there's an external world, there's objective standards, there's universals, there's laws of logic. All those things have to be the case for you to even make a sentence. So that's what I'm saying, is that the problem of evil argument doesn't work because it's not addressing the transcendental argument, and how the transcendental argument points out that if there is no God or good, then there is no basis for good or evil. Does that make sense or not really?
I just feel bad for those people. I don't know how, it's like they're just gripping for straws. There's one, many years ago, you probably didn't see this, but Michael Savage was on the air with Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen those interviews.
Okay, yeah. And he just came out, like he just got side-swacked by Ben because he took over his show or whatever, and it was some like dirty dealing going on, and they were talking about it. But also he had a new book come out. I forget the name of the book, but the book was basically kind of him searching for God. And a lot of times it was just kind of about, I'm trying to remember, but it's like the whole point of his, like, many experiences in his life where he's just searching and searching and searching. And it's like, a lot of times, I haven't really heard any real actual proof or evidence for God, but it's like, I'm stuck in that same paradox of like, is it in the clouds? Is it in the eye of this child? Is it in this art? But I'm in this big universe, but just the fact that I'm seeking for this, but I don't hear anything back. And I don't know, maybe this is kind of like Christian paradox, or I don't know how to preface it, but it's just like my last little like comment on it, and I'll just mute.
Okay. Yeah, those are good questions. I mean, I guess my answer to that about the way God speaks is through, first of all, divine revelation. So that would be, what's contained in the Orthodox Bible and the teaching of the church. It would be eventually more and more of a direct interaction and sense of God's presence. But that's something that comes after, I think, a time of purification, repentance, and so forth. And that's what we do as part of our life in the church. So I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm just pointing out that the problem of evil issue is rather a consequence of the reality of free will and the reality of secondary causes that creatures can engage in. So why God chose to permit the world to be that way, there's not any obligation on God's part to reveal to all of his finite creatures all of the infinite variations of created causes as to why it's this way. And if you read the book of Job, the answer is more so we can't really in this life comprehend all of the different created causal chains and how things work together for the good, as Paul says in Romans 8. So there is an element of mystery there with how does divine sovereignty and providence and free will all work together. And one thing I would say is that this is an expectation that no worldview can actually answer. And Christianity is not a worldview that gives you every answer to every problem. It's a worldview that gives you an account of knowledge, ethics, and metaphysics as possibilities to even use or to engage in. That doesn't mean that every aspect or element of the physical world or science or knowledge or metaphysics is immediately knowable or demonstrable. So the transcendental argument is addressing the preconditions to knowledge, to making sentences, to making meaning at all. And that's why I think it's it's really the best philosophical argument for God's existence, right? It's not the only reason that people come to believe in God. There's many reasons why we come to believe what we believe. But it's in terms of the domain of logic and philosophy, I think it's the best argument.